Joanna Muriel. I'm the Director of Programs with Latinos for Education, and I personally thank you for being here and joining us tonight. I'm very excited about the rest of the night downstairs and hearing the questions and get the discussion going. And so with that, I'm going to introduce you to Alex Davila. She is a member of the Greater Boston Latino Network and will give you the welcome.
Buenas noches y bienvenidos. Good evening. Welcome, everybody. I know it's a little schizophrenic, our weather. Yesterday, sunny, and today. Thank you for venturing out with us. I know I'm supposed to be brief, but I always talk too much, so I'm just going to tell you that right now. I also wanted to say I am a very proud member of the Boston School Committee, and I want to welcome everybody tonight, all of our City Hall people, our mayor, our superintendent, all of our BPS staff, the commissioner, and many of the community-based organizations that made this possible tonight. Chief Martinez, I could go on and on, long list, so thank you everybody for being with us tonight. I just would say that I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about all of the statistics and negative statistics about the Latino community and our students. We all know, we've heard it over and over again about dropouts, our health, etc., how our state has the worst income inequality for Latinos. I mean, we could go on and on. What I want to say is, despite all of that, we need to focus on the things that are positive about our community. We have a very young community, a very talented community. We have many, many assets that include being bilingual and bicultural, having a spirit of entrepreneurship, caring for our families, being proud residents of not only this Commonwealth, but across the country, and really wanting to be engaged and involved in what's happening in our communities. So rather than focusing on those things, I also don't want to say that it's a rosy picture for our Latino students and families. We know that we have a lot of work to do to close the achievement gap, but we do have a lot of great things going for us here at Boston Public Schools in terms of having teachers that really care about our students, having administration that really care about our students. So we need to look at those positive things, but at the same time, we know that we really need to make sure that we have staff, we have administration that is reflective of the student population of today. We know that we really need to focus on making sure that we accept and treasure and value the culture and the language of the students that are coming into our doors every day. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And we want to make sure that no young person ever feels that they are not college ready, that they can't do that, or that they can't be an entrepreneur. So tonight, really, we want to hear from our new commissioner. Congratulations. We want to hear from our mayor as well, and from our superintendent in terms of some of the pieces that are happening right now for our Latino students. I'm very fortunate to be part of the Latino Network. We were formed in 2013. It is all the Latino-led organizations in Boston that have come together to really focus underrepresentation in every sector, whether we talk about healthcare, we talk about higher education, we talk about elected and city hall, et cetera. We're really looking at those because we know that in order to affect change, we need to have people at the table. I'm very fortunate in our work. We also work with Latina Circle, and they are an amazing group of women who are working to connect other women, to really take on leadership roles, and they also have many other things, most currently working with entrepreneurs, and they have an annual conference that's called Amplify, to really bring all of our community together to really amplify our voice and really move the needle for our young people. And then lastly, Latinos for Education, which is the three organizations have come together to really make tonight happen. I really want to thank Amanda Fernandez, because she knows she put a lot of work into this. And Latinos for Education is really working on something very critical, which is really making sure that we have teachers, we have headmasters, we have administration that is reflective of our students, and also that we have Latinos who are part of boards. I'm on the board of my daughter's school, and we just got one of your fellows, and she's amazing, so really excited. So I would just say that there's a lot of work to be done. So we're starting this conversation, and we're very excited to work with you, Commissioner, and obviously excited to work with the Mayor and the Superintendent. We have things that are happening, again, in our schools that are positive, but there are a lot more things that need to happen. So without further ado, I just really want to welcome our wonderful Mayor, who has been a champion for education and really has put many resources over and over again. We've seen some of the highest budgets in our history in BPS, and really, he really cares. If you ever see him with a young person, you know that that is a genuine thing. So we're really fortunate that he really is very dedicated to our young people and to education, making sure that our young people are successful. So Mayor Walsh.
Thank you, Alex. And I want to thank Alex for all her great work. And also, last week I hadn't confirmed for this event, and Alex texted me twice, and I should have just responded after the first time. I said, absolutely, I'll be there. So I want to thank you for everything you do. I also want to thank Michael Conto from our school committee, Alex on our school committee, Michael Conto, Hardin Coleman's here from our school committee. Thank you very much for being here. We have school leaders here. We have Marty Martinez, who's Chief of Health and Human Services. We have Ron Dorsey, Chief of Education. We have a whole bunch of other folks that are here today. I too want to thank Commissioner Jeff Riley, who is certainly very familiar with this district here in Boston, and thank him for all his work that he's doing at the state as he's learning the process as he moves through there. So thank you for everything. Let me just be very clear. I want to start just, every single child deserves a great education. There's no question about that. Alex talked a little bit about not going through the negative numbers, and I think that's important, that sometimes we acknowledge those numbers, but also how do we fix those numbers, and I don't think we always have to go on the negative numbers. We need to make sure that our kids meet their particular needs. We need to make sure that we help them support their cultural identity. We need to make sure that we inspire them as well as instruct them. And we need to make sure that we create pathways to college and life for those young people so that they're prepared as they move forward. Our population in Boston is growing. In 1980, our population was 563,000 people living in the city of Boston. It's now 695,000 people in the city of Boston. Almost all of that growth can be accounted by the growth in the Latino community in our city. That's where we see our growth happening in Boston. We also are looking at a 21st century city, and how do we make sure we meet the needs through economic impacts and cultural diversity, and how do we continue to move forward. Boston is Boston today because of the Latino community. Boston will be Boston tomorrow because of the Latino community. Latino community, 21% of our population in the city of Boston, 42% of our students in our schools. So as Alex talked about the change in needs in our schools for educators and for leadership, it certainly does reflect that. We have to make sure that our schools are culturally competent. We have to make sure that we communicate and teach in more than one language in our city, in our schools. Our schools must be safe from racism and discrimination. Whether racism comes on the playground or the classroom or the White House, the bottom line is that we need to make sure Latino students get all the tools they need to be successful, so Boston can be successful, because Boston won't succeed without that. Many of our students and our schools are succeeding. I just want to give you a couple of stats, positive stats. The Winships Elementary School in Brighton, 33% Latino. East Boston High School, 79% Latino. O'Donnell Elementary School in East Boston, 90% Latino. The Perkins Elementary School in South Boston, 40% Latino, and many, many more. And these schools are being recognized as the great work they're doing. And there's other schools, and if I don't mention you, I know there's leaders here saying, what about my school? I'll mention that. We also have charter schools here today, and the success in the charter school system. So this isn't about pitting one school against another. I want to go off script for a second. I got elected in 1997 to the House of Representatives. In the House of Representatives in 1997, we have a budget. In the budget, we started talking about how we can improve the schools. As a state rep from Dorchester, I never had a conversation with the school department, and I just continued to follow the leadership of the House and the Senate on how we change the schools. In 2013, was it 13 or 14, we did 13 education reform. We did education, not reform, we did the level 3 schools. 10, 11? 2010. We did education reform, if you will, level 3 schools, where you could go in and change the teachers in it. We talked about wraparound services. We talked about giving the schools the supports they needed to be successful with all these changes. And I voted for that law. I voted for that legislation. I fought for that legislation. As a matter of fact, I went into the speaker and I fought, and he laughed at me. He said, I can't believe you're in here fighting for this legislation, because the union and other people were fighting against it. And we were supposed to, at that time, follow up with funding to our district for wraparound services. And that didn't happen. And one of the challenges that I see as the mayor of Boston now for 5 years is that in order to turn a district around, the district knows how to turn the district around. And to allow the district to work with all the other partners, but not mandating what has to happen all the time. And I'm in so many meetings all the time where somebody, you gotta do this, you gotta do that, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. And at the end of the day, there are young people that are affected by it. I read the paper all the time, and when I read the paper, all I hear is the bad stories, the start times, big stories on that. School buses, not picking kids up across the board. We front page stories on that. Not funding enough, even though we have historic funding measurements in the school department. An incident at Brighton High where kids, it goes down to a level 4 or 5 school, and there's a story about that. And 2 weeks ago, I was at a Bishop Borders, had a conversation with young men of color, young black men of color. And I was asked to go to that table. And there was 6 tables set up, and there was about 10 people at each table, some adults and kids. And I was at one of the tables, and I was listening, and there's a young black man there who graduated East Boston High School 2 years ago. And he said at the table, the topic was stereotyping. And they were talking about the media. And they were talking about the media reports of Brighton High School about stereotyping, that no education is going on in that school, and no one's learning in that school. And he took offense to that because he's in college. And I think it's important as we continue to move on, and as you have the conversation downstairs, and I know the Commissioner O'Reilly understands this because he's been in difficult situations. It's important for us to understand that young people are paying attention to what we say. So when we're concerned about what the White House is saying, whether it's on immigrants or Muslims or women or poor people or people of color, everyone pays attention to that. We're supposed to say, well, the president, we got to stop because we got to go out and talk about it. But when it comes to our own schools, we just continue to add on. And what I'm asking for tonight is that as we continue to move together, we work together as a team. That means working with the state, that means working with the legislature, that means working with the parents, it means working with all of our organizations on a goal to make sure that we can continue to improve our schools. That's what we need. That's what our school needs. When I gave my State of the City a couple of years ago, I started out with saying, I'm the mayor of all schools. I'm the mayor of charter schools, I'm the mayor of private schools, I'm the mayor of parochial schools, I'm the mayor of public schools. I just so happen to have the public school under my portfolio. And I said, let's not get caught up in the fight between all of them, because young people are paying attention to that fight. So if we're trying to improve the quality in our schools here in Boston, across the Commonwealth, and across this country, we got to remember as adults, when we say things, they have consequences. And young people are paying attention to that. And we should be building up our schools, not tearing them down. We have challenges, no question about it. And money's not going to be the only thing that's going to solve those challenges. It's going to be making sure we have programming in place and systems in place to help the young people that need the help in our districts. When Alex mentioned, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, when Alex mentioned about the numbers of students in the Latino community underperforming, well, every single area where the numbers are high, I underperformed. Every single area. I wasn't reading at a good level. I couldn't do math. I had a very short attention span. Only for my parents, I probably would have dropped out because I was afraid of them. When I graduated high school, I didn't get into any college I wanted to go to. I didn't get into Suffolk. I didn't get into BC. I didn't get into any colleges because my grades weren't there, so I went to Quincy Junior College for a year. But I had a strong foundation at home, and these kids that we're talking about in a lot of cases, Latino community, they have a strong foundation at home. And they grew up in an immigrant household that parents, like my mother and father, could only help me till about 3rd grade. Because they didn't know how to diagram sentences. They didn't know how to do long division. They have a 3rd and 4th grade education themselves. They didn't have that opportunity. And occasionally my mother and father would bring over my older cousins who went through the system to try and help us out and tutor us, if they will. My brother was a better student than I was when it came to tutoring. I only say that tonight because there are some great things happening in our district. And there are great success stories in our district. I went to Fenway High School the other day, and I was walking around, and I was thinking to myself, if I had a high school-aged kid, I would send my child to Fenway because of what was happening in the school. I went to Charlestown High School the other day, and I said the same thing to myself as I walked around the school. I went to the Perkins School, and I said, if I had a child that was of early learning, I'd love to send my child to the Perkins School because of the life in the school, the teachers and the principals and everyone loving each other and loving the kids and knowing the kids and great education. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. I knew you were here, but I'd still say the Perkins, Mr. Martin. And all the schools I just mentioned in Brighton and East Boston and South Boston, all those great schools. So we have an opportunity here in Boston. We have an opportunity to do something really special. We're in the process right now of beginning to look at the next superintendent search in Boston. Alex has agreed to chair the committee, along with Keith Motley. The 2 leaders we chose were chosen for a reason. Actually, I didn't choose them. The school committee did, Michael Conto. And Michael came to me and said, I have 2 people I want to put as the head of this search. I said, who are they? He said, Alex. I said, well, love Alex, she's great. She's a national expert in Latino youth. And he mentioned Keith Motley. And I watched Keith Motley as a leader at UMass Boston when he went in there, when people weren't encouraged about the expansion of the school. And I watched him go to the community and sell the expansion of the school to the community. But I also realized while he was there, that school is majority people of color that go to school at UMass Boston. He was able to raise the numbers. He was able to raise the bar at that school. And he's able to have that school on a lot of young people's wish list to get into. And I think about how do we lead our district to the next level. They're gonna need your help. They're gonna need your expertise. They're gonna need your support. They're gonna need your love. And they're gonna need all of that because it is important for us as we continue to move here in our district. I wanna thank everyone in this room who's been in this space for a long time doing the work. I wanna thank you for the work that you've done. I wanna thank the young people that are in this room that haven't been in this space as long. And I wanna thank you for the work you're doing. And I wanna thank Alex because about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, Alex came into me with the Latino Report with some other folks in this room. And it was a very honest conversation. And at that point, the representation in the city wasn't there. And we made a commitment at that point as a city, on the city side, to do what we needed to do to improve those numbers. We are still not there, but we're getting there. To bring back to the schools, we are not there. But with everyone in this room and everyone in the city that loves our school and loves our kids, we will get there. Thank you and have a great night.
Thank you, Mayor Walsh. We appreciate you being here. So I'm Amanda Fernandez. I'm the CEO and founder of Latinos for Education. But we're here tonight to have our new commissioner talk to us a little bit tonight about the state of Latino education. Several months back when the commissioner was first appointed, I found out that he was doing a listening tour around the state. And so I asked him if he would put particular priority on spending some time listening to the voices of Latino community, families, parents, others, to be a part of the conversation, to inform where we should be headed as a state. So he agreed to do that. And so here we are, fast forward to October 1st. And this is the first in a series of town halls that the commissioner is doing. Boston is first. We're doing another one in Holyoke on Wednesday. We have the nice car ride out there in a couple days. And then we'll do one in Somerville as well. So I'd like to welcome the commissioner. I'm not going to give a long introduction in terms of your bio. I think everyone knows a lot about you. And so we'd like to invite you to come up to share a little bit about your thoughts.
I don't know if they've got my PowerPoint up, but here we go. For the next 3 hours, I'd like to review the rules and regulations. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be home, although I've never been to this building before. I spent the majority of my career as a Boston Public School employee, as a principal and a deputy superintendent in charge of the middle schools and K-8s. Some of you know my kids go to the Boston Public Schools to this day. And I think when I think about the Boston Public Schools, I don't think about the negativity. I think about all the amazing people that work inside of this district. I have 2 children, one who's 15. He is a typically performing child, and a daughter who's 13. She has some special needs. And when she was starting in kindergarten, her mom and I were worried for her. She was going to have to wear a weight vest to help her with her regulation issues. She'd have to have those elastics on the bottom of her chair. She'd have to have movement breaks and speech therapy. And we were afraid that she was going to be teased when she went to the Harvard Kent in Charlestown. But that actually didn't happen. And I can still name the teacher, Miss Nunez, in kindergarten at the Harvard Kent, who made my daughter love school. And in fact, every day from the age of 5 until 12, my daughter would run home, and I'd walk in the door and she'd say, "Daddy, Daddy, let's play school." Now, Daddy's played a lot of school all day. But I played with her because she loved being part of an educational community. And if you could see my daughter from when she was 5 to how she's thrived now at the age of 13, that is really because of the teachers in the Boston Public Schools. They've saved her. And she's become this amazing little human that I'm convinced is going to run the world. When we talk about education, we talk a lot about fairness. I was raised in a Marine Corps family where my father believed deeply in this idea of a meritocracy, that if you just worked hard enough, anyone could be or do anything they wanted. But that actually only works if all kids start in the same place when they graduate from high school. And we know that's not the case. Things aren't fair all over. We see a changing demographic in this country. This is an interesting slide which came out a couple of years ago, showing the percentage of low-income students in the US. 51% of American public school children are now at or near the poverty line, which means they qualify for free or reduced lunch. And so what we're starting to see is this idea in this country of haves and have-nots. And maybe it's about poverty, maybe it's about a child like my own with a disability, maybe it's about learning a second language, but we owe it to everyone to make sure that all of our kids are treated fairly and given the resources that they need. We are leading the nation, I'm told, on various metrics and testing. And what I've said everywhere I've gone across this state is, let's not break our arms patting ourselves on the back, because we're also leading the nation on achievement gaps and opportunity gaps for our children. And maybe, just maybe, we should settle for being number 2 or 3 in the country if we could close our achievement gap so all of our kids had a great and excellent education. Folks came out recently with a report that underlined this very fact, and they called it number 1 for some. And it highlighted how not all kids are getting an amazing education. And the work we have to do going forward is to make sure that all of our children, not some of our children, get what they need. Now, how do we do that? Some of it is definitely going to be about finances. There's no doubt about it. But not all of it. There is a foundation budget, which some of you have heard of, which is broken, the formula. There was a commission that came out 3-4 years ago now that said it's broken. And when I was a superintendent in Lawrence, they told me they were shorting me $10 million a year. $10 million that my kids could have used in Lawrence to be even better than they were. Because there's nothing wrong with the kids. The adults have to get back together in a room and sort this out. In my position, I'm supposed to be neutral on this, but I can't be neutral on it. We have to fix the foundation budget to make sure that all of our kids and all of our communities get the money that they need, and we get our kids the chances they deserve for the American dream. Now, here's the thing. I would say it's not all about the money. And the money that comes, we have to be strategic with it. We don't just throw money at the problem and think it's going to go away. We need to be strategic about what works that's going to help our kids do better. What are the initiatives or programs that our kids deserve, and we can get them with the money that we're going to be allocated. And that's, we need to be strategic, not just throw money at it anymore. We definitely need funding for our children. And folks need to come together to make that a reality. When I was in Lawrence, a few things happened. First and foremost, I was told at the height of education reform to fire all the teachers and turn it into charter schools. And I did not do that. Instead, I took 6 months to assess the situation. And what I found was that the strength of the Lawrence Public Schools was actually the teaching force. And so we kept 90% of our teachers feeling that they were great, good, or working to improve. We did cut the size of the central office by 40% and put those monies back at the schools. I did replace about half of the principals. I felt like there was a leadership issue, particularly around this one important topic: letting parents into the schools and letting them be part of their child's education. We had principals there that said, give us your kid at 8 in the morning, you stay there, we'll bring them back to you at 3 o'clock. And that is not acceptable. And that's why I couldn't tolerate that, and we had to make changes. Because without parents as part of the process, we are missing a huge factor in this equation. And so parents need to be part of this process. I have a video. I can't believe I'm going to show the video. People ask me what it is to be a great teacher. And I'm going to try to figure out if we can make this video work, which is what I've been showing to teachers. I could spend probably a week talking about what makes great teaching. I have deep pedagogical knowledge. I can talk about all that stuff. I know you don't want to hear it. But the most crystalline form of great teaching that I've ever seen is in this short video, if somebody can make it play.
Will it play automatically, or? Okay, you just keep going.
I keep going? Okay. Okay. Oh, no.
One more, maybe?
Ah. Tell me who the teacher is in this video, if it plays.
It's not showing. Everybody take a break.
When I am down and oh my soul so weary, when troubles come and my heart burdened be, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. raise me up to more than I can be.
That's the best example of teaching I think I've ever seen. A father who taught his son how to run track, who took him to all those meets as a kid, helped him get all the way to the Olympics. And then when the Olympics came and he was supposed to win the gold medal, and he blew his hamstring out, his father came to his side, picked him up. One of the most interesting things I see is he keeps taking his son's hands away from his face, as if to tell him, keep your head up. And he doesn't finish the race with him. He gets him back on track and lets him finish it himself. And if that's not what good teaching is, right? We teach our kids, when they fall down or make mistakes, we get them back up and send them on their way. I don't know what is. When we talk about education, we need to do better by our children. When I was in Lawrence, we had some good results. Not great, a lot of work to do. Graduation rate went from 52 to 72. Dropout rate was cut in half. We went from one level 1 school to 10, although that doesn't exist, the level system doesn't exist anymore, the new accountability system. But there were real gains. And it really had nothing to do with me. And people ask all the time, people thought it was the acceleration academies, that was part of it, or the teacher, you know, there was all these hypotheses of what it was. And what I've said is, this is what I think was the secret sauce in Lawrence, where we tripled the number of Latino teachers in the district in 5 years. And if you look at the total number of employees in Lawrence who are Latino, you see we went from 378 in 2011 to 832 in 2018. At the end of the day, the community in Lawrence, which had been badgered and been talked about in the most despicable terms for years, finally said, enough. You're not going to talk about us like this anymore. And they said, we're going to jump in and help. And so what you see is this huge infusion of people from the community who said, we're going to do better by our kids. And that, I think, is the key to actually getting something done. When an entire community comes together and says, we can do better. We know the research that says that a child of color that sees one teacher in their lifetime that looks like them has significantly better life outcomes. Just to see one teacher like them. And yet, 40% of our children in Massachusetts are students of color, and only 8% of our teaching force is. We've got to do better. And so that's where we need to go. We've got to get some money for targeted support for our kids. We've got to get people excited about teaching again. And while the rest of the world is fighting with each other, why don't we focus on our kids and get something done? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Riley. And that video was very inspiring. I started thinking about all the sacrifices that our immigrant parents make to be in this country. And that's what I thought about when I watched that video. And in particular for Latino families, how important it is that we support their education, our students and families. So that's what I thought about, so thank you for that, Commissioner. I'm going to do a quick introduction of Superintendent Laura Perrell. No intros? Okay. So our last speaker for tonight will be Superintendent Perrell. And I thank you very much for hosting us tonight.
Thank you, Amanda. I want to make sure we all get downstairs for, I think, the real action and real conversation, which involves a much broader audience and I think is critical for all of us to hear, and for me in particular in this role working with the leadership team of the Boston Public Schools, many of whom are gathered here in addition to school committee members. So I'm going to keep this short because anything important I need to say, I will wait and say downstairs in the larger forum. I do want to thank Commissioner Riley both for bringing me to tears just a minute ago. Thank you, Jeff. But also for joining us here at Bolling at the central office of the Boston Public Schools. And a big thank you to Latinos for Education. Amanda Fernandez and her team have worked with us in recent weeks to make this happen, so thank you so much, Amanda, but also to Latina Circle and Amplify Latinx and the Greater Boston Latino Network for co-sponsoring this evening's gathering and really focusing us all on a critically important question of the state of Latino education, both statewide, but also right here in Boston. This is a district and a city of vast diversity, and that is one of our strengths, but there are so many ways that we need to fundamentally change some of our actions to make sure we are maximizing that at every stretch. And as a longtime city resident and a longtime BPS parent, I feel that special urgency as someone who has been inside and part of and experienced that education for my own children from kindergarten through high school graduation, starting, by the way, in one of our two-way bilingual schools, the Rafael Hernandez in Eggleston Square, which created a terrific foundation for my now fully fluent in both languages daughter at 21. So I too have seen many strengths and see many strengths in the Boston Public Schools. But one of the things that I do want to say just briefly is that with a student population that is 40% Latinx, as the commissioner pointed out and others have, and the mayor as well, it is of particular importance that we listen to and address the needs of our Latinx community. And that is not just about students, but also continuing to ensure that our teaching force and our leadership better reflects the diversity of our student population. And while Boston has made great strides and BPS has made great strides in overall diversity, I will say just very clearly before this audience in particular that we have a long way to go in terms of Latinx representation in the teaching force, but particularly also at the leadership level. And I've spoken with a number of you. We do have a number of key leadership positions that I am looking forward to very eagerly recruiting and working with many of you to ensure that we continue to pull not just overall diversity where we are strong, but specifically populations where we know there needs to be greater resonance in our school buildings and in our leadership. So I'm hopefully will be reaching out to many of you on that. I also just quickly, we did some shout outs earlier, but I want to acknowledge that Senator Sonia Chang Diaz arrived during the remarks and to thank her for being a part of this. I'm glad that Commissioner Riley is doing a series of these. But for here, since there are so many of us here in this room and gathering downstairs in the school committee chamber who are committed to this work, I'm so grateful that you all are here. Let's go down and hear what we need to hear so that we can turn around and get to work in the way that we all need to get to work. Thank you.